What's up, everybody? Greg and Ryan here for another breakdown of Westworld. This is episode 7, Les Écorchés.
Freeze all malfunctions.
Okay, so I forgot to add the French voice pack, but we can make them afraid of blue screens.
What the hell are you guys doing here?
Oh,
We're back. Bye.
We are diving deep into the latest episode of Westworld. Make sure you keep it locked on GameSpot Universe and subscribe. Let's get into it.
Spoilers ahead.
We need to talk. Strand and his team. I don't think they're here for a rescue mission. We're not even looking for survivors.
What are they here for?
So let's kick things off with the episode title. It's in French, so I'm gonna butcher it.
Omelette de fromage.
It's not omelette du fromage.
No.
Sadly, it's Les Écorchés. I don't know why I did it with
I'm
a
gonna go
Spanish
for
accent.
Les Écorchés.
Oh, that was much better. You studied French though, right?
I did, yes.
Yeah, there.
I forgot most of it, but I can fake it.
Which is French for a painting or sculpture of a human figure with the skin removed to display the musculature, which obviously could be a lot of things in Westworld because, well, I mean, there's the drone hosts that we've seen a lot in season 2 who obviously don't have skin or muscle.
Power walk around different environments.
Could also be like a way of saying, you know, underneath the skin, we're all the same.
Everyone's the same.
Everyone's the same.
There's the iconic Westworld logo that we saw more in season 1 of the person, you know, standing out and
Vitruvian Man.
so Vitruvian Man style.
But another thing it could also be referring to is like skeletons in your closet kind of thing. There's a lot of skeletons beneath the surface.
What do you hide? That kind of thing.
Although it's, you know, skeleton with muscles on, which doesn't really work for the purposes of my metaphor, but I'm going to make it work.
You've unraveled your own metaphor.
Biffed it.
All right, we're back with another cold open. It's been a while. It's been specifically one episode or something like that. And we open with Bernard holding a photo of his son, Charlie, who we haven't seen referenced in quite a while.
No.
And I like it because it kind of reminds us of the underlying motivations that were behind Bernard back.
He's another rope to lash them down.
Yeah, exactly. And then Stubbs rolls up, he's got a bright idea. Stubbs is competent for the most part, but generally you don't want to follow him when he has a bright idea.
The thing is, like, compared to the rest of security, who are basically like stormtroopers at this point, Stubbs is pretty great.
Yeah, he's got freedom of thought and a little bit of creativity to him. So maybe he was alright, but his plan is basically, let's get out of here. Like, it's bad news, let's go. As they're walking out, Strand appears. Full business suit. He's like a teacher who's caught a pupil trying to get out of class.
He'd be
like, where are you going?
Yeah, he'd be a geography teacher.
Yeah, he'd definitely be a geography teacher. And he intercepts them and is like, I need both of you. Someone stuck gum underneath the table and I need to find out now.
And by that I mean someone's killed Teresa.
Using a school metaphor. And then they go back to the cottage.
Yeah, so you see Jock, and behind the bookcase they find... The thing I love about that is the guy goes, boss, you need to see this. And then opens the bookcase. And I'm like, why wouldn't you just like open it and then say? Anyway,
it's like how did he find out that there was something behind it without telling him immediately? So he's like, he opened it, he went, oh, he's gonna love this, but we need to make sure it hits home. So he closes it and he goes, check this out.
Yeah, and behind the door there was another locked door, which I loved, that they had to kick down, despite the fact that the door was hidden. Whatever. They find all the Bernard copies. So we have questions. So why would you lock a door that's behind a hidden bookcase? Question number 1. Number 2, I love the way that Charlotte was like,
I figured you'd have some skeletons in your closet, Bernard. I didn't think they'd be your own.
Skeletons in closets. Lots of hidden things. But also the main question, so Bernard, when he had all that brain damage stuff and the cortical fluid was leaking, we knew he was an unreliable narrator because he had aphasia, he couldn't remember things, he had prosopagnosia, couldn't remember faces, all that stuff. So now there's multiple copies of him.
There is, who knows how many Bernards that we've seen so far. There's Solid Bernard, Liquid Bernard, Big Boss Bernard,
Punished
Bernard, Venom Bernard. There's so many Bernards right now. So we've seen so many perspectives that they could all be one. They could be like a grouping of perspectives, or they could just, it's like unreliable narrator overload right now, but I'm kind of into it.
So we're in the Mesa and Hale is trying to get information out of Bernard about Dolores' attack. So she is using her voice commands, because obviously she knows he's a host, she's using her voice commands to waterboard him. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second because it is grim. Another little bit of information is that the security guys, they hack into their own haptic vests and kind of mesh them with the host's network, the mesh network, to kind of give off a ping, and it'll let them know where the hosts are at 30 feet.
It's like spider sense almost.
Basically like a spider sense, but it doesn't help them because, as I said earlier, stormtroopers, and they begin to copy over Abernathy's control unit from his head into, you know, an exFAT formatted drive.
Yeah, it's just a thumb drive.
So the stuff about the waterboarding, it is grim.
Quite grim, yeah.
So not only are they doing it by voice, so it's not actually really happening. If you kind of pause, you can discover that it's not just waterboarding that they can torture a host by. They have a number of different ways of doing it, like crushing, dental torture, disembowelment, dismemberment, foot whipping.
This is my favorite.
Which one?
Foot whipping.
Oh, God.
What does it even mean?
Like, then you can't like walk, you can't, and imagine if you're put in like a cage and you can't sit down or anything. Kneecapping, pharmacological torture?
Psychological torture, scalping.
Solitary confinement, waterboarding.
Standing cell, that is horrifying.
And then you can like put on different levels of physical restraint, body inclination, like feet above head, lung waterline, inhalation amount, and then the really gross stuff is you can add mods. So fear of drowning and fear of asphyxiating, which you'd think people would, I mean, they would already be pretty bad.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's super, super grim.
Yeah, imagine a virtual torture world, but it's just horrible. It's kind of like Altered Carbon is suddenly flashing to my mind.
It is totally Altered Carbon. But at the same time, you've got to figure out, like, why did Delos program this into the host anyway? Like, why would they need to torture hosts that they built and they control?
Next up, we have the Cradle
Of Filth.
of Filth. It's dirty, it's dank, and we are inside Bernard's head. So they're back at the Mariposa, and he's back. Ford's back, talking about Jim Delos, Papa Delos, and how he like outside in the real world he degraded in his mind, and he went a bit crazy. And so they talk about like they would rather die than make a bad investment. And then he finally reveals that the control unit printed was Ford.
Never saw that coming.
Did anyone not see that coming?
Yeah, true.
So this is prior to him being killed. He had that kind of replica of him made, which is great. And then we have some further revelations about the nature of Westworld and the park and that kind of stuff. Again, this is stuff that we all kind of have figured out by this point, most people, but it's good that the show is finally pushing it out there and being like, here's what it is.
Actually giving some answers.
So the stories haven't changed in 30 years. That's you know, Ford says, haven't you thought about why that is the case? And eventually it's revealed that the Delos project didn't work in the real world, and they won't tell like what's going on in the valley beyond. And obviously there's the stuff about this all being an experiment to create the future of people, and we're decoding ourselves or whatever it may be. So it's a lot of good revelations there.
So if we dig into this scene, so the poem that Ford says when Bernard comes into the Mariposa, it's like to see a world in a grain of sand, is Auguries of Innocence by William Blake. So this poem contains a series of paradoxes which speak of innocence juxtaposed with evil and corruption. So you got to figure that in Ford's mind, at least, the hosts are the innocent, and the humans, who, as he says later in the episode, you know, they build things and then just destroy them because that's human nature, right? So humans are obviously the evil influence in this. Also, fun fact, same poem that was used in the E3 2016 Death Stranding trailer.
Back to Metal Gear / Kojima.
We are always like one
All
step
roads
away.
lead to Kojima.
Not much of a round, aren't you? I'll give you a discount.
He's not a prospect, Clementine. Can't you tell when a man's just here to gawk at the merchandise?
When Clementine hits on Bernard, why did Maeve say he's not a customer, just here to gawk at the merchandise? Oh, because it's all virtual, so she knows.
It's really weird when that happened, like, because there was a period where I was like, can anyone else see him? And then like Maeve directly responds to him. But I was like, are they perceiving him as Bernard, or are they perceiving him as someone else within.
It's just a thing.
Yeah, it's like a generic person. But it was really weird that that interaction happened, and it kind of like it's one of those things that throws you for a loop for a little while.
Another thing is we see just next level God complex. You didn't think Ford's God complex could get any worse, but then he says on the 7th day, God didn't rest. I don't think God rested. He reveled in his creation, knowing that someday it would be destroyed. All right, mate, we get it. You built Westworld.
He's being very heavy-handed with his God stuff right now, and I feel like it's almost a bit. It's so heavy-handed that it feels like a misdirection.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then obviously when we're talking about the host stories, they haven't changed in 30 years because the park is a test chamber. You've got to understand your drives. So when he like overemphasized the word drives, you're obviously immediately reminded of the time where Ford is quizzing Papa Abernathy because he's like, what are your drives? And so Bernard is like, oh, so this is so Delos can copy people. Which makes you kind of think of the movie Future World, where they steal all the dignitaries and copy them so Delos can control the world. But it also could be, I don't know, like, why would you want to? I mean, essentially, Delos at this point must be one of the richest companies in the world, and it has all this incredible technology. Does it need to? Maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a bit odd. I mean, it's that desperate, you know, eternal chase for immortality.
Rich people.
Yeah, that rich people are always going for. Again, altered carbon.
Yeah, pretty much. And then, you know, Ford is like, well, Delos' project, it didn't work. He references his music again. He's like, it's like a soft-headed boy humming a tune someone else wrote, which means that maybe he hasn't fully become his music yet. You know, that thing he said just before Dolores shot him. He was like, you know, Chopin, Beethoven, it became their music. But he also knew that just like Jim Delos, he couldn't be digitized and returned to the real world. You know, he can't make analog digital then analog again. So he knew that the cradle was going to be destroyed because he basically lit that match and he needed to nope the hell out of there. So he's basically jumped back onto Bernard.
Hitching a ride with Bernard.
Hitching a ride. Actually, episode 10 is called The Passenger, which is cool. Also kind of reminds me of Dexter, like the dog passenger. But hopefully it won't end as badly as Dexter did.
Oh God, no.
But also he won't tell Bernard what's in the Valley Beyond. But there's a very good, so Reddit, I kind of had a look this morning, they're kind of theorizing that the Valley Beyond could be a cradle, which is obviously where all the host backups and stories are kept, but for the human host hybrids. Which could be cool.
That could be cool.
So, we're going for a ride, Bernard. Back to the Valley Beyond.
Time for a shootout. I love me a good shootout. And we're in an abandoned town, not the abandoned town as if there's only one, because Westworld there's loads of them. And we have Maeve protecting her daughter, which is actually currently someone else's daughter, but she's like, I'll figure it out.
I made a promise.
Fine,
I made a promise.
And then we have Bill, the man in black, rolling up. And obviously they have that scene where Maeve is protecting her daughter and Bill comes in and kills her, stabs her. So there's like flashes of that again. Bill comes in and like she's like, you! And he's like, who's back there? He's like startled old man for a second. And then Bill kind of believes that she's part of the game that he's trying to play, Ford's new game.
Because then that would be the symmetry because she was in the old game.
Yeah, because he was like, oh, you've done this before, why are you trying this again? And then he starts to realize that something else is up here because Maeve immediately shoots him and Bill's forced to kind of take cover. Maeve comes out and then begins using her Jedi mind tricks. She accesses the mesh, downloads some files, and then spreads some commands, and then Bill's men start turning on him. I just want to point out, a lot of gunslingers taking point-blank shots at Bill and hitting him in the arm, like repeatedly.
But you got it in the arm, you got
it in the arm, you got it in the abdomen. It's like, these guys are supposed to be like full-time gunfirers. They should be able to hit a guy in the head unless like, I don't want to over-speculate and I feel like this could be reading way too far, but like, it feels as if at some point someone's stopping it from happening. It's probably just the writers needing him to keep Bill in the running, but it was just a bit weird. And then like Maeve rolls up and there's a standoff. Lawrence joins in. He's like, I'm still here, guys. Remember me? I'm here. I'm cool. And like has a gun to Maeve. And then Maeve pulls the smart move where she kind of asks Lawrence to think about Bill a little closer. And it kind of pushes forward the awakening, or forces him to realize that he's had the awakening already and has been choosing not to kind of look at it. And then he remembers all the previous timelines in which Bill's kind of murdered his wife and his daughter and treated him poorly. And then we have an incredible,
Sizemore comes in clutch.
He comes in. Like every time he appears now, I think he's slowly becoming one of my favorite bumbling heroes.
Oh yeah, he's incredible.
Yeah, so he returns and saves the day.
Well, sort of. Maeve does get shut down, and the Ghost Nation manages to steal her daughter, which is weird because she was obsessed with like, don't let them take me, don't let them take me kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, so questions from this, how is Bill surviving this?
Yeah, how?
Because I mean, like, if he is a host, then he has to be like a Bernard-esque host, because out of everyone who's been in the park, he's been going for 30 odd years, they will have the most complete data. All of the hosts will have all the complete data on Bill, so it could be that he's a host. But then you got it, like what would be the point of
Yeah.
No, I think maybe he could be a host, because seriously, like the amount of shots that he's getting is bordering on...
It's crazy that he's still alive.
Maeve's powers, so they don't work on hosts who have been awakened, but she can sort of subtly convince them to think about things a little deeper, which is... And obviously, like, when they were in the town a couple of episodes ago, and Lawrence was like, hey, you had a daughter, right? And Bill was like, oh, I never told you about my daughter. And we speculated then, we were like, something about that is going to bite him in the arse.
Yeah.
And by bite him in the arse, we mean shoot him in the stomach.
Yeah, so she can just basically fill in the blanks for everyone. I think they, like you said, they have to be like on the edge of the awakening, and she can just push them over.
And also, what did the Ghost Nation want with Maeve's daughter? So when they had that confrontation, they were like, we're on the same path. Yeah. So maybe... I don't know, like... Yeah, because when they first meet, like come face to face, they say, we're on the same path, come with us. And it felt like a non-threatening invite when they first did it. And she was like, no, your path leads to darkness and blood or whatever, wherever it may be. So it feels like they still want her. So they kidnap the daughter to try and get her to come, lure her out. I guess they should have done a better job because like, didn't really think about what if she gets like completely shot up. So who knows how important that is, but it seems like it's like a trap or almost. With Westworld, you're so used to seeing the characters die and come back, but now that the Cradle has been destroyed, why Lawrence?
Yeah, Lawrence is...
This episode alone you have like Lawrence, Clementine, Angela.
Angela's gone, yeah. There's a lot of
Papa
people,
Abernathy.
Being wiped off the table.
And so, like, I'm still in that weird phase where I'm like, oh, they'll be back next week.
Unless the Valley Beyond is backup.
Yeah, which could be interesting. So you got Ford and Bernard talking again, and Ford takes Bernard to Arnold's house. So it's, obviously you can recognize it from the bricks, symbol watch. But instead of building it out in the real world first, Arnold built a copy in Westworld. I guess like a very elaborate Sims-esque thing.
First draft.
But Ford takes Bernard there because he needs to see where it all began, where he began, because that's where Bernard was refined and tested upon by not only Ford, but Dolores too.
Dolores involved, yeah.
Which basically means that now if we go back and rewatch all the interactions where it's just Bernard, Ben Arnold, and Dolores, that it has a completely different meaning because she was there trying to get fidelity. But what's interesting from this scene is that obviously you get Ford kind of giveth with one hand and taketh away with the other. Yeah. He's taken away the free will, and this is where he probably like becomes the passenger.
Yeah, so it makes sense for Dolores to be the person with the most amount of experience on what Arnold was like, making her the perfect person to test the fidelity of his clone.
Obsessed with that.
Yeah, so that's kind of like her memories make it perfect because Ford, he'd be affected by bias, so it would influence how perfect.
Completely subjective.
Yeah, exactly. So humans want fidelity, perfection. This is something they kind of like highlight. But Ford is saying like, but the hosts are different. You're different, and they're different because they're an original work. Like,
you're not trying to directly.
Yeah. So that was the important thing and the interesting thing that kind of adds a wrinkle to this whole thing because it's fairly obvious, they're just trying to create a clone. But when you introduce the fact that the idea that they're not trying to make a clone, they're trying to make something just slightly different, so it's unique. It's the idea of creating a new species, which again, Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, you went into that. I was talking about his bloody God complex.
It's a little bit of the same. Yeah. And then there's like a bunch of, this is where he goes full into like gibberish nonsense god complex thing where he starts like making quotes and stuff like that.
They want fidelity, Bernard. A faithful self-portrait of the most murderous species since time began. But you and all the other hosts are something very different. An original work. More just, more noble. And your very nature, Bernard, ensures they will devour you. And all the beauty of who you are, of who you could be, will be poured out into the darkness forever. Unless we open the door.
The Door, which is what this season's called. Season 1 was called The Maze, this is The Door.
And then Ford is like, you're a bit weak of constitution, like, I don't think you're gonna survive. And then Bernard's like, but wait, you gave us free will, let me do this. He's like, you won't need it. Because
this was, really confusing to me.
It was really sudden and confusing.
Because it's like, you know that he's been controlling Clementine to basically be his pawn and he can kind of do that, but it's like, why would you give something in just to take it away?
Yeah.
Unless this has something to do with Arnold in the first place, because, you know, we talk about that bias, and maybe this is Ford's final middle finger to Arnold in that...
It could be another part of establishing fidelity. You don't really know what freedom is until it's taken away from you. And
that's good.
Like this it could be another step or a missing piece in making sure Bernard is whole and becomes something completely unique. If he's had the experience of not being able to control himself and being coerced by someone else, he'll know what it means to have individuality and freedom. So perhaps that's part of the, you know, and the whole thing about him printing himself and is part of this as well.
I like it.
Speculation.
So back in the Mesa, you know, Bernard comes out of the cradle and Elsie says, you know, the clog is gone, and we now know that the clog is Ford because he's just moved from the cradle straight into Bernard's noggin.
From the cradle to the grave. Nah, it doesn't work, does it? Well,
yeah, it does.
I'll run with it. You can.
So the assault on the Mesa has been continuing. We'll kind of like brush through this because there's not really that much to dissect until we get to this part. But Angela goes to the cradle because they want to destroy it, uses her feminine tomes.
I can't believe this worked. I was like, my dude, you came in here like guns toting, like with that angry Irishman giving you like
a poor angry Irishman
who's like, do this, you get out of the way, you suck. And then one of his men's is like, utterly falls for the robot lady. Like, how did you not see that coming?
But Angela, after, you know, Clementine dies to protect her, to ensure that she manages to carry out this mission, makes it to the cradle, seduces that guy, blows everything up. Good, you know, mission accomplished. But also, Hale and Dolores are having this conversation where they're like, oh yeah, humans want to be hosts now, and Dolores is, you know, you know, she had some character development this week.
Yeah.
And she's not just like the 100% badass that they were kind of pushing for at the start of this.
Yeah.
And says that, you know, no, we didn't want those backups. Those are chains, and now we're truly free, kind of thing. And she has, you know, the reunion with Papa Abernathy. He kind of breaks free of that catatonia. Yeah. Teddy has gone full Terminator.
He's scaring me now. I'm not a fan of Terminator Teddy.
Yeah, and there's an upsetting, you know, her father dies, Papa Abernathy dies, and then like a second later she's got the whirly saw and she's like, I'm just gonna get this out of your hand now. I'm gonna get the key out.
Ready, Daddy?
I love you, baby girl.
I love you too.
So I'm glad that Charlotte got taken down a peg a bit, because she was starting to get a bit power hungry and seemed to be like stomping around the different places and being like, you do this. So the fact that she's now been confronted with Dolores and sees what the real threat is and what Dolores is capable of, and in that moment, like, pooed her pants and was like, please don't kill me.
Please don't kill me.
I think that will be hopefully a humbling moment for her where she truly sees what's at jeopardy now and the forces that they're facing. Hopefully. Chances are probably not.
But the cradle's gone, the chains are gone, so all of the host backups are gone. So what's interesting to me is like, how many of the hosts now remember everything? I mean, some of them will have like memories because of the Reveries update, and like, will they be able to access that? Or will they, like, if they weren't awake, are they only going to get what was in their Reveries update, for example?
That is a good question that unfortunately we're not ready to talk about right now.
We're not ready to talk about DLC plans for Westworld yet. The bit with Angela.
That was, yeah.
So one thing I've noticed is, like, I kind of need to go back and watch it again, but, like, when did her crown disappear?
That was very confusing, because, like, the way I thought, all right, she goes into the thing and uses, while she's plugged in, like, she gets the crown or whatever, and then somehow blows everything up.
She had the same blood stain as Bernard did when he came out of the cradle.
Yeah,
so
I
I
thought,
assume she's been in there.
Yeah, so I thought, oh, it's a time thing again. But no, she uses a grenade to blow everything up, which makes the whole...
Unless she went in before.
It's very confusing.
I kind of need a timeline of this.
Yeah.
But also, you know, she was wearing a crown of thorns, died so that everyone could live. Biblical. Biblical, guys. I see what you're doing. I see what you're getting with. Papa Abernathy back at it again with the Shakespeare. So he can't seem to speak in, like, proper things that he wants to say. He can only quote the bard. One fire burns out, another's burning. One pain is lessened by another's anguish is from Romeo and Juliet.
Which makes his father-daughter relationship a bit weird.
And, you know, obviously, R.I.P. Papa Abernathy. That's you gone, because you, But, I mean, she's still got your control unit.
Yeah, you could be placed into someone else.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
That would be weird.
I liked Papa Abernathy.
I did.
Yeah, he was a wholesome guy, quoting Shakespeare.
When the great library burned, the first 10,000 years of stories were reduced to ash. But those stories never really perished. They became a new story.
Back in the Mesa, we have Bernard talking to Ford again. He's walking around, it's popping off, things falling apart.
Music's playing.
And there's a discussion about stories and fire destroying a library.
10,000 years of history.
10,000 years of history, which we thought...
Well, you hear like a library burning down, you think, oh, the Great Fire of Alexandria, which wasn't actually a great fire. There's no like proper proof of it. Apparently, the library at Alexandria just, you know, fell to disrepair, people not taking care of it. Small fires, people attacking it, bureaucracy, but no great blaze. But what was really nice about this is, like, technically, because the Cradle simulates a bunch of stuff, even though the park's been running for 30 years, it could essentially be 10,000 years because of all the calculations and stuff that they've been running, all the simulations.
Yeah. So, as we said earlier, it's descending into madness there. And, you know, earlier, you know, Ford said, you know, the humans were the most murderous species around, and we're getting a good example of that. Everyone's kind of killing each other. Obviously, there are also, you know, robots or androids involved. And Bernard effectively says, like, is this the end to your story? Is this what you wanted it to be? And we have Ford saying, this is no longer my story, it's your story.
Yeah, and then he shuts the system down.
Which is a risk that he kind of like verbalizes, because if he does do it, it means Dolores has free reign.
The passage from one world to the next requires bold steps, Bernard.
You could have just said, if you want to make an omelette, you have to break some eggs.
But I think the passage to one world to another is very deliberate. He wants all the hosts to just get out into the real world and wreak havoc.
And I just want an omelette.
So as Maeve is lying on the stretcher, Sizemore's brought her back to the Mesa. She's been shot up. Dolores comes down, you know, she got what she wants. She's got the control unit. She has the key that was in her father's head. She's leaving this place to carry on her murderous spree. And she has this weird conversation when she's talking to Maeve, and she is such a hypocrite because Maeve is like, my daughter's still out there, I need to get back. And Dolores is like, well, she's just another rope to lash us down.
Now that Papa Abernathy's donezo.
Your dad has been dead for like 5 minutes, man.
But
wow.
There's also a kind of like, the conversation with them was quite heartfelt in a lot of ways.
It was like two big powerhouses respecting each other.
Yeah, I think the fact that she says, how did you get here? Is kind of like, oh, I wasn't the only one on the path here. Someone else out there was smart and powerful and awoken enough to get here as well. So it was like mutual respect.
Oh, you see, I read it as, what are you doing here? I thought you were powerful enough to not come here and just find your way out by yourself.
Oh, interesting.
But also, Maeve is like, oh, does this thing about like being tied down, does that justify what you've done to Teddy?
Meanwhile, Teddy's in the background like,
yeah, the Terminator.
Yeah.
Dolores keeps, she says to Dolores, she's like, you're lost in the dark, and Dolores is like, well, you've been in the dark long enough. And now basically Ford has opened the door and the crack of light is coming in, so it all makes sense in a way, in a very metaphorical way, as the Westworld writers love to do. But then, you know, there's another little bit of symmetry where Dolores is like, they're going to torture you, they're going to turn you against us all, you should just end it now. But I respect you enough that you should be able to choose your own path, even if your own path is death. But her path actually will lead to the Ghost Nation, because that's what he said in the last episode. But it was also a nice little bit of symmetry, because that's what she said about Musashi being able to choose his own path, even if that path leads to death.
We have our buddy hiding away again still.
Sizemore, so he has kind of gone 180 here. He's like now on the side of the host, or at least on the side of Maeve, and brought her back here, but he still had to hide.
I'm glad he hid, because Dolores would definitely have cut him down to Sizemore. All right, still in the Mesa.
This is basically a bottle episode.
Yeah, Ford has now, we see him fully assume direct intervention is necessary.
Assuming direct control.
So he takes control of Bernard, and we have a terrifying, like in the darkness, muzzle flashes lighting up Ford as he guns down different people around him. And then we have a time slip, and
that's my time slip noise.
Yeah, and we have Costa talking about Bernard while he's being
so Hale is like,
tortured,
interrogating him.
From earlier in the episode. And Costa says he's basically having an internal struggle. It looks like he's trying to debug himself.
Was there something else
Something else is in there. So he's effectively defragging his own hard drive to make himself run better effectively. Or maybe it'll end with him having some sort of awakening. Maybe he'll become the perfect being after this. Who knows? So episode 10 is called The Passenger.
Yep, because he obviously knew the Cradle was going to get destroyed and got the hell out of Dodge. Yeah. So what's interesting is now that Ford is like taking direct control of Bernard, which is also really cool because for so long Ford has been getting other people to do his dirty work, and now he is probably getting his hands filthy, covered in blood. Who's guiding the man in black on his journey? Was anyone ever guiding Bill on his journey, or has he just gone mad and he just thinks that he's seeing messages everywhere?
Yeah, so again, he could be like, in the same way that Bernard's an unreliable narrator, what he's seeing could be unreliable. Because we had that moment where he talked to Lawrence's daughter again a few episodes ago, and that was like a guiding push as well. But like, was that real, or was that him just going a bit mental and, you know?
Confirmation bias. So there's a very interesting bit where Charlotte Hale is talking to Bernard and she's trying to get the location of Abernathy, and you see it for the first time through the glass. And he looks like he says Ford or four.
Bernard, tell these men what you just told me.
Why? What do you want to do with
Analysis. What did you just tell me, Bernard?
Peter Abernathy's control unit is in Sector 16, Zone 4.
You remember where it is, don't you?
Peter Abernathy's control unit is in Sector 16, Zone 4.
It was very weird that she decided to have them come in and then repeat what he said instead of just relaying that in the same way that she would. Because she's had this very like powerful kind of demeanor around her where she just gets what she wants and moves on. And now it's like showboating for Strand or whatever.
But then earlier in the episode she says, you wouldn't lie to me, would you, Bernard? Which is quite interesting.
Yeah, I think there's something more going on there.
Yeah, especially because Bernard is crying. Why would he be crying if he's in like analysis mode, if they turn affect off, for example? But is it because he knows that it's actually a setup?
Maybe, you know, she's accusing Stubbs of trying to sell on the kind of key. Maybe she's trying to sell on the key.
Yeah, interesting. But another cool thing I saw on Reddit briefly, shout out to user enough_lemons.
I fully agree, enough with the lemons.
So Sector 16, Zone 4, if you go to Proverbs 16:4, the Lord works out everything to its proper end, even the wicked for a day of disaster.
Unsettling,
this could again
ominous.
Be confirmation bias because
it could be anything.
Could be anything. But I think we've seen the preview for the next episode. It looks like it's going to be focusing around the Ghost Nation, around Écorchés. Looks like he might have already solved the maze.
Yeah, he might have been the first person to do it and like was wiped. And he seems to be having similar. Thematically, it looks like it ties in with a lot of other characters, like bringing a lot of them together. This could be really interesting.
Very excited.
Also, Tomahawks.
Thanks for joining us as we've been dissecting yet another episode of Westworld this season, man. building to something big.
Yeah.
I'm very excited for it. Don't forget you can subscribe to GameSpot Universe here on YouTube for more Westworld, Legion, Marvel, DC, Star Wars, the lot.
Wrestling.
A
lot of wrestling happening.
You can come find Tam and I on Twitter. I'm at Lucy James Games.
I'm at Tamoor H.
And we'll be back again next week.
Freeze all water functions.